Stop the presses, as in the key presses, not the large mechanical printing things. Never mind. Still excited by Model F keyboard. Well, here we are today with the ASUS STRIX B550-E. Yeah, there's an E, there's an F, there's some different versions. Just depends on some of the parameters, so pay attention to what I'm saying. And it's a pretty solid motherboard, especially given the price point. I was kind of surprised. You know, ASUS usually charges a premium. You know, the ASUS brand is sort of known as a premium brand. It comes with a cost, but I was delightfully surprised with this motherboard. Let's take a deeper look. In case you're wondering what's the difference between B550 and X570, well, B550 just launched July 2020. X570 launched July 2019, so X570 has a head start on it. X570 is also a much higher end chipset than B550. X570 is PCI Express 4 through and through. It offers PCI Express 4 connectivity downstream of the chipset, so that means you've got more USB ports, more faster USB ports, more M.2 slots, more faster M.2 slots because they can operate at the full PCI Express 4.0 bandwidth. B550 doesn't need a fan though. X570 on almost all X570 motherboards needs a fan to keep it cool. You know, that's not maybe the best thing. Some people have gotten whiny chipset fans and have to RMA their motherboard and get a more quiet fan or work on the fan profiles or make sure that their case has adequate cooling. Well, B550, you don't need to worry about your motherboard having a fan. The motherboard has no moving parts, which is pretty nice. B550 motherboards do run the gamut though. I mean, there are inexpensive B550 motherboards, like just barely over $100 US, that have much more limited features than this. And there are extremely high-end B550 motherboards that have even more features than this motherboard. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag. It really, you can do feature shopping when you're looking for an affordable AM4 motherboard to support third and fourth generation Ryzen AM4 CPUs. So fourth generation's on the horizon at the time that I'm doing this video. See what I did there? It's a pun. So don't really know. The 4000 series APUs are just barely out, but the 4000 series APUs are based on Zen 2, not Zen 3. Zen 3 is on the horizon, so Zen 3 is not Ryzen 3000. Yeah, I know it's confusing, but you know, if you got a 3000 or a 3000 XT, if you wanted to build a really high-end, you know, 3600 XT and on up system with good Intel NICs or possibly something where you would need to buy 8x8 PCIe configuration, this motherboard wouldn't be a bad choice. If you're only ever planning to have a single GPU, you could drop down to a lesser expensive motherboard. I just reviewed the ASUS Prime B550. There are other B550 motherboard choices. So if you're only ever going to have a single GPU, you don't need the complexity of the extra X16 slot that's X8 electrical and the complexity that comes with that and the added motherboard cost. Okay, the ROG STRIX B550 gaming motherboard. This is a full ATX motherboard. It's the B550 chipset. You open it, you get that ROG experience. Welcome to the Republic. I've even put a little bit of aesthetic on the back of the motherboard. I'm not sure that anybody's motherboard tray would let you see that. Get the front of the board. It's not overly ostentatious, but you know, you do have the you know, premium high-end features, a few of them. Also, of course, in the box, you've got the manual and the installation CD and the ROG stickers. I like the Pixel ROG logo. I think that's my favorite version of the ROG logo so far. It's a B550 motherboard, but you know, you've got some accessories. You get the RGB header for your 5050. You get the RGB header for the Corsair digital link. So that's the 3-pin version. Also got 4 SATA cables right in the box. Then on the other side, we've got zip ties, M.2 mounting screws, a USB-C to audio cable, and an ROG keychain lanyard thing. In here, we've got our Wi-Fi 6 antenna, which is a proper Wi-Fi 6 antenna. It's not the little useless rubber duck antennas that are at the back of the motherboard. I don't like the antennas that are mounted at the back of the motherboard because your metal case will tend to block wireless signals. So you need to be able to put your wireless antenna somewhere you're going to use it if you're buying a motherboard that has Wi-Fi and you have to use the Wi-Fi feature of it. Of course, if you can, try to wire in your motherboard. You'll you know, sort of the general rule of thumb is any computer you're going to be at for more than 15 minutes, just go ahead and wire it in. Now, some really awesome features this motherboard has. Let's start at the back plate, the rear I/O. Alright, first up we've got the USB BIOS flashback port and button. You just hit the button and your BIOS will be flashed from a USB stick. I'd like it better if the BIOS button were recessed, but since there's no other button back here, you shouldn't be reaching around back here to accidentally press something. There's a stack of 4 USB 2.0 ports. These are great for those low-speed peripherals, keyboards, mice, things like that. Although I'm a little surprised that there's not more USB 3.0 5 gigabit ports that are available at the back of the motherboard. It's a little surprising. I mean, it's USB 2.0. I don't know, that seems odd to me, and I haven't really seen any other reviewers bring that up. We've got a USB Type-C port, that is a 10 gigabit port, so that's nice. Then we've got 2 more 10 gigabit ports that are Type A. Then we've got our Intel, yes, it's an Intel NIC built in, our 2.5 gig wired LAN connection. That Intel interface is the i225V. We've got DisplayPort out and HDMI out. That's for those 4th generation APUs. They're available right now at the time that I'm filming this for OEMs only. It hasn't entered retail availability, but I promise you, ASUS is cooking up something special if you're looking for an 8-core APU or a 6-core APU with built-in Vega graphics. We've got our antenna connections for our Wi-Fi 6. That is an Intel AX200 solution, so both the Wi-Fi and the wired connection are Intel solutions. Those are the more expensive and generally better solutions for wired and wireless Ethernet, so good job ASUS. Then we've got our Realtek ALC1220 based Supreme FX. Now ASUS has got a little bit of special sauce here with the Realtek ALC1220. It is a slightly higher grade Realtek ALC1220, and we've also got the audio Type-C. So that's why included in the box was that USB Type-C to 3.5mm jack, so you can use, you know, your USB Type-C port for audio. The I/O shield is built in, which is nice for a motherboard at this price point. A couple other nice features is the motherboard has 6 SATA connections at the front edge of the motherboard. 6 SATA devices. I mean, that seems a little overkill, a little crazy to me. In terms of USB connectivity on the motherboard though, we do have Type-C, so that's nice. Type A, 2 5 gigabit ports near the power connector, and 2 USB 2.0 headers. So if you splurge and get some extra USB 2.0 headers, or if your case has both USB 3 and C and USB 2, you're going to be able to use all of those headers on this motherboard and get quite a bit more connectivity, although it's going to be through the front panel or through whatever your case provides. If RGB is your thing, it does have dual digital and dual 50-50 headers, so you can run whatever you want to do. In terms of fan headers, the thing has got a lot of fan headers. There's 3 up near the CPU, so you can do a push-pull configuration plus 1 for your case fans. There's 1 at the rear, so you can have a rear exhaust 4-pin fan, and there's 2 at the bottom edge of the motherboard. We've also got a digital postcode LED readout, and of course digital SPDIF header and a front panel audio header. That's pretty much all the headers on the motherboard other than the front panel header. It does have long life electrolytic capacitors, it looks like. I mean, they kind of look electrolytic, but they're also kind of colored black, so I don't know. But I'm going to trust ASUS on this one. Let's take a look at the PCIe layout on this board. So first thing you notice, you've got 2 safe slot, physical metal reinforced X16 slots, and then another X16 slot at the bottom. Electrically though, it's a by 16 to the CPU or by 8 by 8 to the CPU, meaning the 2 reinforced slots are wired electrically to the CPU. It's 16 lanes total, so you can have 1 slot that's pure by 16 PCI Express 4.0, or 2 slots PCI Express 4.0 directly to the CPU, but 8 lanes apiece. I know what you're thinking. This B550 motherboard can run by 8 by 8. The graphics cards are in separate IOMMU groups. This is going to be great. No, everything off the B550 chipset is in one IOMMU group. So all of the USB ports and all of the SATA that come from the chipset are going to be in one group. You do get the 1 PCI Express 4.0 slot in its own IOMMU group, and then each of the by 8 slots are in their own IOMMU group, and then everything else is all just grouped together. So your Wi-Fi, your network card, your USB peripherals that are not directly from the CPU, those are all in one group. So I'm going to recommend X570 if you're going to do an IOMMU VFIO build. Other than that, Linux support on this board, solid. No RGB controller support, of course, but everything else worked well. The bottom slot is PCI Express 3.0 by 4. So for those high-end capture cards that are 4 lanes wide, or some of the older SSDs like the Intel 750 that are PCI Express 3.0 4 lanes, that'd be a good choice for that. We've got 2 M.2 slots on board. The top one near the CPU, that's PCI Express 4.0. It's wired directly into the CPU. The one on the bottom, it's wired into the B550 chipset, that's PCI Express 3.0, and it does share some resources with other stuff on the motherboard. So be sure to consult the manual if you're gonna, populate your system. In general, my rule of thumb is that you can use, some bulk storage devices with SATA and one high-performance M.2. I generally don't recommend two high-performance M.2 drives on the B550 chipset. It also has built-in M.2 heat spreaders. Heat spreaders can be kind of nice if the controller runs hot on your M.2, but do you need them? Do you really? If you need them, your M.2 is going to come with them 9 times out of 10. So this would be a great motherboard to pair with a relatively inexpensive M.2s like the Sabre PCI Express 4.0 SSD. It goes on sale all the time. Also ADATA is a good choice, M.2, to pair with this motherboard because they're relatively inexpensive. They'll take a fair bit of punishment and they'll work great in the physical location here above the GPU. It's going to get some airflow. It's not going to overheat. It's going to work pretty well. Now let's talk about power phases and power implementation. This is a 12+2 power phase implementation for AM4. It is overkill. Most AM4 CPUs, with the possible exception of the new XT CPUs that were launched by AMD around July of 2020, not really overclockable. There's a built-in auto overclock and there's a built-in PBO. Personally, I've had better luck in general with PBO, but you don't really get all that much except maybe on the multi-core workloads with a PBO type situation, and it produces a lot more heat. That said, at the very top end, with something like a 3950X, the most that I've ever seen an AM4 CPU draw and not be unstable is in 160 to 170 watt range. Strictly speaking, it's 105 watt TDP, but the CPU could draw up to 143, 144 watts in normal operation. So the question for me is always, what does the VRM do when we draw that much power? The good news is that this 12+2 configuration, it's overkill. It's extreme maximum overkill. So it's not going to run hot, even in an overclock situation, even with PBO, even with everything else. So it is an overbuilt VRM solution for current AM4 CPUs. It is definitely an overbuilt situation if you're going to get an AM4 APU, because the 4000 series APUs that I'm aware of at the time of this video top out at 65 watts. All right, for our testing config, we're running a 3900X with PBO, and we're running Prime 95. And so I'm just gonna haul out the flir here, which will let us see what sort of temperature we're actually getting on the motherboard. And we can see that these temperatures roughly line up with what we're getting in hardware info. So there's nothing unusual or unscrupulous going on here with this VRM implementation. I didn't expect there would be, but some people are like, ooh, pretty colors. So hey, let's roll it in there. You might be wondering about memory support. Well, I tested both 3800 with the new XT Ryzen series CPUs and 3600. Across the board, no problems, no stability issues, nothing like that. I'm using G-Skill Trident Z memory, Trident Z Neo, and I think an older 3600 Trident Z kit. They might both be Trident Z Neo. It's like CL14, CL15 memory. It's really blisteringly fast. Also, for capacity, I tested the OLOY 128 gig. So the motherboard claims to support up to DDR4 4400 OC. Really, AMD just tests up to 3600 and sort of drops down from there depending on memory density. So like expecting 3600 with 128 gigs of memory, that might be asking a bit much of the integrated memory controller and even the XT processors. It does seem that the integrated memory controller and the XT processors is a little better than the X processors. It's not something officially that AMD advertises, but this motherboard has good support for both 3600 and 3800 memory with those caveats. So if you're going to run really fast memory, keep that in mind. Yes, it is on my shopping list. I'm going to buy some fast, like 4000, 4200, 4400 memory. At some point, I'm just waiting for the pricing to settle down because the pricing fluctuations have been insane lately. Although I've seen 64 gig kits for like, $200 or less, which is insane. So there's that. But yeah, memory support on this motherboard, pretty good, all things considered. Yes, memory support will be better on higher end boards with more PCB layers, but tested on this motherboard, not bad. I'm gonna trust ASUS on this one and hope that it doesn't come back to haunt me, because the numbers that I'm getting from the flir look pretty good, and basically if the whole thing is not overheating, like the cooler that it runs, the longer that it lasts. That's pretty much true of all electronics. And it looks to me like you really will get the 5+ year longevity out of this motherboard. And ASUS backs that up with a 3-year warranty. Yeah, it will be like gnashing teeth if you do have to mail it in for warranty service, because it's a mail-in warranty service, but that's true of all computer components, so These came out a little while ago. I just got this from ASUS. I think some of the people on the forum got their boards before I did. This one was sent by ASUS, but I got a chance to play with it. And the only odd thing that I ran into is that the pre-release BIOS on it was doing some weird stuff. But the 0803, I think it was 0803, 0802, the 702-2020 BIOS for this motherboard resolved all of those issues. So let's get the ASUS BIOS special sauce. ASUS puts a lot of work into their BIOS. It does a lot of really awesome, fancy stuff. So to sum it up, if you pick this motherboard, I don't think you would go wrong picking this motherboard. It's a perfectly reasonable choice, even if you're going for the higher end CPUs, even if you're going for a dual GPU or GPU plus some other device that is really high performance. Like you could do a two-way, like a RAID 0 PCI Express 4.0 NVMe and that 2x8 slot. I wouldn't recommend NVMe RAID with PCI 3 and PCI E4 unless they're both PCI E3 devices, like you're using like a Samsung 960 type RAID 0 setup if you wanted to. That's pushing it a little bit with this motherboard, but you would get reasonable performance. You're going to get much better performance on that with this chipset, with this motherboard layout, than you would on, say, you know, Z390 or Z490 from Intel, because the DMI configuration on Intel will really bottleneck when you start to run M.2 RAID configuration, unless you start using your PCIe lanes that come from the CPU. It's not really the case with the AMD platform and the way that it's architected. So it's a pretty interesting situation. It's a pretty interesting time to be alive. Competition is alive and well, and I'm really hard pressed to recommend anything higher end, except for like the most insane professionals that are, you know, doing crazy stuff with their machines. And the fact that you can build your platform around an approximately 200 US motherboard that's probably only going to go down in price from here, it really is an incredible time to be working with computers. So I don't know, I had a good time with this motherboard. If you picked it up and you want to show off your build or whatever, come to the Level 1 forums, post pictures, show us what you did. Or if you ran into trouble, or it's like, hey, does your motherboard do this weird thing? Because figured out some stuff that way for some of our forum members. Come to the Level 1 forums. I'm Wendell, I'm signing out. We'll see you there.